Welcome, my friends, to a new episode of Teaching Unplugged. And in this episode, we're going to talk about a wonderful activity that is based on drama. It's called Directed Group Visualization. Now, in this activity, all what you need to do is to start telling a story. And then you would ask one of your students to complete your story from where you start. And then you move to another student and ask this student to continue the story from where his friend stopped. And it goes like that. So it's kind of building a whole story based on the creativity of your students on the spot. Now, sometimes you can just, add a lot of other factors to the atmosphere that would make the activity more enjoyable. Like when teaching face-to-face, you can ask your students to sit on the floor in a kind of a circle. And then you can turn the lights off and start telling the story while your students are closing their eyes. And then you touch one of your students' head with a marker or something, and that student completes the story from where he stopped. And this is how you keep going with this. You move from one student to another till you have your full story. So let's see how I did this activity online on Zoom with a group of wonderful different candidates. And then we're going to reflect on the activity and talk about its advantages and disadvantages. Let's go. Now, let me tell you about this activity, my friends. In this activity, I am going to tell you a story, okay? And you will listen to my story. Then, in the middle of the story, I will call someone's name. Like I will say, for example, Hana Al-Assal, or I will say Amani Yusuf, or I will say Amr Barakat, or I will say Rana Al-Imam, right? Once I say someone's name, you're going to complete my story with your ideas. And then I will say stop and call someone else's name. This person will have to complete the story from where Rana or Hannah or Ayat stopped. So you need to build on the last thing that your friend said. So let me ask you a couple of questions. Let me go to Basant. Basant, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Basant, tell me. So, when will people speak?
When you call them.
Exactly, when I call the names. And what are they going to say exactly?
They will complete the story.
Very good. They will complete my story. Now, what if I asked someone else? What would he do? Complete my story or his friend's last part?
His friend's story. His friend's part.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you. Now, let me start. Thank you very much. Are we ready? Once upon a time, my mom sent me to buy some stuff for her from a grocery store near where she lived. Well, I went down the stairs. I went to the grocery store. I bought the stuff she wanted. And when I was going back home, I was alone in the middle of the street. No one was there. I was completely alone. And I heard the noise of 7 dogs barking behind my back. The 7 dogs were running like crazy, coming my way. I was really shocked and I was scared. Amani Yusuf.
And I began to run fast towards my home.
Amr Barakat.
So when I went home, I cried and cried and told my mother that The dogs grabbed all the groceries.
منة الله.
And then she started yelling at me because I left all of the groceries behind.
شنو ده؟
She told me that you took all the money from our house and you just left the things out.
مروة مجدي.
So you should go back again to the grocery and do the same shopping because I need this stuff to cook our food.
مريم بسطويسي.
So I thought of a way to escape that, and I had to go out again. And on my way, I tried to take a different route to the grocery shop, but I couldn't find another one.
عبد الرحمن إمام.
And I decided to face my fears, and I'm going to hit the dogs with anything that I may find in the road, so that I will have the chance to run one more time to the grocery and give the things back one more time.
Summer Hamdi.
I think they already said everything, but I can go with going back again because I forgot something and I need to check out something.
Say it again, Abdurrahman Imam.
So I decided to face my fears, and I said I will take a stick or a stone with me, and whenever the dogs are going to bark, I will hit them with the stones, so I will be able to run fast one more time to the grocery to get my stuff back.
Hannah Al-Assad.
By the time I got there, the dog had already eaten all the groceries. So I had no choice but to go back to the grocery shop and buy it again from my own money.
Marwa Bahauddin.
Yeah, after I got all the things that my mom told me to get it, I returned it back to home. And also I cried to my mom not to tell me again to go in this street because I'm so afraid from dogs. My mom tried to calm me, but I'm trying to be quiet, to be calm, but I feel so scared.
Okay, right, wonderful. Okay. I really loved your story, by the way. Last time I played this game with my TEFL candidates on a face-to-face course, someone said, and the dogs ate me. Like
into a story. Into a story.
Exactly. Like he was unable to come up with anything else. Right. So as you saw, my friends, in this activity, directed group visualization, we have some skills that we focus on. And I would say mainly listening. Listening is a very important skill in this activity. Why? Because your students have to listen carefully to what their friends are saying because they know that they can be picked to complete the story. So they need to listen intensively and they need to listen carefully. However, in the form that you saw, in the shape that you saw, I don't think that this is a good activity for speaking. Why? Because if you're going to run it in a plenary the way I did, each student will speak less than half a minute or something. And not all the students will be able to speak. If every student in your class, and you have, for example, 30 students, or let's say you have 20 students, if each of them spoke for 1 minute, okay, which would not happen, so you end up having 20 minutes taken away from your lesson. And in those 20 minutes, each student spoke only for 1 minute. So it's not a very good activity for speaking unless you do a lot of adaptations. Like what? Like maybe you put your students in groups, maybe groups of 3 people, and then you give them a card that has, a beginning of a story, and then they develop the story on their own in groups, and this would guarantee more production in terms of speaking. But to run it in the plenary, it's very hard to say that there was a good focus on speaking, right? So, but we agree that listening was wonderful here. If we're talking about systems, we can say that there is a good focus on grammar in terms of narrative tenses, because it's a story and it is told in the past tenses, so that's a good practice of grammar in here. Maybe intonation, if you ask your students to use the right intonation when they're expressing and telling the story. So yeah, that might be included as well. Thinking about the level, this activity is wonderful for intermediate students and more. It's not impossible with lower levels, but it's best with intermediate students and more, because intermediate students can actually come up with ideas on the spot and share these ideas. So it would be wonderful with higher levels than lower levels. Thinking about advantages, one of the things I would say that the activity is fun, it's funny, and that's a very important element. It's great when the students are learning English and having fun at the same time. So that's one thing. One more thing I can add, it's a light material activity. You don't need any material as a teacher. All what you need is to start a story and then everything happens. I would say also it's an adaptable activity, because you can always change your story so that it can fit in the topic of your lesson. You can make your story about sports. You can make your story about, you know, liars. You can make your stories about doctors, whatever you want. Also, another advantage that this activity can be followed up with wonderful ideas, because you can ask your students to turn the story they came up with into a written task, and they start writing, and that will make you integrate the writing skills as well, creative writing. In terms of setting up, it's not a very difficult activity to set up, and you can actually run it with large classes, no problem. Now let's think about disadvantages. And as I said, it's not easy to run it with lower levels. That's a disadvantage. Also, if one of your students is weaker than the other, and then you surprise this student by asking him to complete the story and then is unable to complete it, that can be embarrassing. So it can be embarrassing for weaker students. And also, some students are not so creative. They can't come up with ideas on the spot, and that might be another challenge also in this activity. Also, another source of embarrassment is when students start laughing at their friend's pronunciation when they are completing the story and telling the story. That also can be another tricky thing in here. So it's not an easy activity for shy students. Also, we talked about speaking, that in order to make it a good speaking activity, you can't run it in, in a plenary. I mean, you have to create smaller groups of students so that more production is there. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this episode of Teaching Unplugged. I hope you enjoyed this activity. Until we meet again, I'll be down there in the comments answering all your questions. Bye-bye.